Welcome to EDO Breakthrough, the podcast where we tackle economic development challenges head on. From small towns to bustling cities, every place has its own hurdles to overcome. The EDO Breakthrough podcast creates an environment of collaboration, innovation, and understanding where we can share our real-life challenges and brainstorm solutions. I'm your host, Sandy Dubé, a certified economic developer and founder of PPR Strategies. Each week, we'll be welcoming a different, brilliant, place-based mind to talk through real-life economic development challenges that have been shared with us by you, our gracious listeners. Welcome. I'm Sandy Dubé with your latest episode of the EDO podcast, and I'm here with my friend Ebonie Atkins, who is the Managing Director of Henrico Economic Development Authority. Welcome, Ebonie.
Thank you for having me, Sandy. It's a pleasure.
Yay. So we're just going to dive in, but give our listeners a little bit of information about who you are and, your role in Henrico, and maybe a little teaser of what you used to do.
Sure. All right. Yes, as you mentioned, I'm Managing Director here in Henrico, working mostly with business retention and expansion. So it's supporting our existing businesses as they grow. That includes businesses large and small. Prior to this, I've worked at the federal level, the state level, all economic development related, but I did have a stint in higher education back home in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I've worked at a university up there doing DEI programs and kind of transitioned that into a career in supporting businesses and particularly small businesses as well. And so it's been an interesting journey going from Michigan to Virginia, but it's been a fun ride. So happy to be here and share more about it.
Awesome. And for those who don't know, can you tell us where Henrico is?
Yeah, so we are part of the Richmond, Virginia MSA. So we are right outside of the state capital of Virginia. We are a pretty diversified economy. We have 7 Fortune 1000 companies here in Henrico and a rich industrial company base as well. We also are home to the Richmond International Airport.
Awesome. So immediately before joining the Economic Development Authority, you worked at VEDP, the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. Is that correct?
That's right.
What did you do at VEDP?
Well, I started as a data analyst, a workforce analyst, which was fun. I love data. I'm kind of a math person. Secretly, I keep it secret. But I was looking at the impact of one of their incentive programs and analyzing that data and supporting some of the workforce efforts there, and then transition over to business investment. So I was able to do business attraction, which is a little bit sexier, I guess. But going out to different markets, a couple trips to Canada and across the U.S., meeting with CEOs, going to trade shows, and selling Virginia and telling them all about the wonderful assets of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and attempting, or hopefully and sometimes successfully, getting them to land here in Virginia.
I love it. So this EDO Breakthrough, we take questions from listeners and, people who submit questions online, on our website, social media, stuff like that. We're always getting questions about relationships. Obviously, economic development is a relationship game, if nothing else. Can you share some, the things, best practices, things that you do that you feel comfortable maintaining, establishing, creating, and maintaining relationships?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that because just last night I did a workshop on navigating business networking. It was at the library here. We have a strong partnership with our library to do some business support workshops and events and education. So I just did a presentation on that. And one of the biggest things that I tried to share with the attendees is that you have to get over the idea of caring what other people think. And I think that can be difficult. Of course, we want to stay professional and polished and poised, but don't be scared to reach out on LinkedIn to someone you don't know. If you're trying to get a contact at a company, at an organization, go ahead and send that email. Hey, introducing yourself, throw the ask in there if you have to. And there are going to be hundreds of non responses. But I don't even remember which ones those are, right? A lot of times I'm cold calling or cold emailing. And unless I have a real objective, hey, I sent a LinkedIn connection, they didn't accept it, I'm okay with that, right? I'm not keeping track of the losses, I'm keeping track of the wins. So I think it's better to just kind of let go of that fear, put yourself out there. It's okay to reach out. Oftentimes, people are happy to talk to you, they want to share more about what they do. Businesses love to talk about how they're growing and the successes that they're experiencing at that time. So why not prompt them to do that even more? You'd be surprised the reaction you get.
That's awesome. I love all of that. And it made me think about one of the questions that, or struggles that we often have are introverts versus extroverts. And, kind of being, I am an extrovert, but I know many introverts. And I think as I get older, honestly, I tend to get a little bit more introverted and want to just takes different ways to fill up my cup again, so to speak, and, refuel. But being in those environments, I'm curious if you had any advice for introverts living in an extroverted networking space. Can often be a struggle.
That was actually the last question I got at the event. One of the attendees asked, as an introvert, what do you do when that's not necessarily your natural way of presenting yourself? And honestly, I don't know, maybe some people will say it's not the best advice, but I do believe in faking it until you make it. Sometimes you have to give yourself that pep talk before you enter the room. Set a goal or kind of a minimum threshold. I'm going to enter this room and talk to 3 people. And just do it confidently. Sometimes it's hard. I have those moments. I am an extrovert, but sometimes it takes a lot of work for me to go into spaces where I don't know anyone. I do have moments where I go into a bathroom stall and take a break and then come back out and try to hit my 3 interactions, right? But set a goal for yourself for what you plan on doing at that event or during that meeting and try to accomplish that. And then also remember that it is a short, static period in time. So you've got 45 minutes of being on for a purpose that you know will serve you in the long run. So just get out there and do it. You got to make the sacrifice. You have to be uncomfortable. Success requires discomfort. And so do it for 45 minutes or so. Set the time limit, set the number of meetings or interactions or people that you want to connect with. And then you can go home and breathe afterwards.
I love that. And I love the setting a goal for yourself, and what prompted me was the idea of, you don't need to get up on the stage immediately when you walk into a room. You're interacting with like one human at a time. And, maybe you can find and connect with those kind of around the outliers in the room that might be awkwardly staring at their phone, trying to not make eye contact might be a really easy, yes. And they might really appreciate you making the first step to say something.
Yeah, you're not the only introvert entering space. This is not a room of 100% extroverts and you are the lone ranger out there trying to put yourself out there. There are others like you. There are wallflowers that would love for you to join the garden. And so you just got to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was thinking about another conversation, in terms of reaching out and sending the email, making the LinkedIn connection, things like that. And was having a conversation earlier, kind of giving somebody a little pep talk on making a sales pitch, asking somebody to do something, and they felt really awkward. I said, just give them the opportunity to say yes or no, and it's okay either way. But as on the receiving side, I would rather be able to, have the information and be able to say no than to find out too late that I missed this thing because you were afraid to send something to me. Don't make me miss out on the party if because you're afraid I'm going to say no.
Yeah. And it's fine. No is fine. No is an answer too.
Yeah, cool. I am curious, this obviously idea of kind of walking into a room. What is that like? And how do you translate or your extrovertedness and that natural proclivity into some of your business retention activities?
It's interesting because other people would say I have a natural proclivity to that, but I wouldn't. You'd be surprised. I think I'm maybe an ambivert or something because it does take energy, and sometimes it's not my natural inclination to just talk to random people, but it is a part of my job. So with business retention, it's all about meeting new people, and I think the thing that really attracts me to that is I like learning. I like learning about new processes, how things are made. I love hearing about the entrepreneurship journey, whether it's a small firm or a large. How did you get here? How did this product come about? My uncle created this in his garage and now it's, changing the world sort of thing. I love those stories. And so I really tap into the story that I'm going to get from the interaction. And so that I don't focus too much of my attention on the fact that I'm entering this building, going into this conference room with people I don't know. What are we going to talk about? I know what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about their product. We're going to talk about their processes. I'm going to learn more about what they're doing in this building. That's why I'm here. That's what I want to do. And out of that is where I get some of the gaps or the needs that they have. And I'm able to think about some of the solutions for that as well.
I often say that economic development is a community's best kept secret. And it's one of those things that, if you are fortunate enough in your community to know your economic developer, then while your business has a much greater chance for success. But as economic developers, you're often completely outnumbered, and it's really hard to get out and connect with every business in your community. And so figuring out how to replicate yourself and work with partners and collaborate and market your organization, so to speak,
Yeah.
is certainly the
So
goal.
that's why networking events are so important, and I see the value in them. There are different associations and conferences because I can kind of kill a couple birds with one stone. Look at the guest list. Who's going to be there? Who do I need to connect with instead of each individual meeting? That can be taxing. You're driving across the county for a 1 hour meeting with two individuals versus going to a chamber event or to a manufacturing association event where there are going to be numerous businesses in one room to kind of capture that audience there.
So we got a question about identifying, members, community partners. Can you talk a little bit about the partners that you would either bring with you to a business retention visit, or that, help you to, and you help to share their message, they help to share yours?
Yeah, it really depends on the industry, right? And so oftentimes the conversation is around workforce. So I'm trying to figure out who is the right workforce partner. Is it public schools? Is it career and technical education, which is part of our public schools? But are we looking to build a electrician or manufacturing pipeline to this company? Or are we more working with a corporate entity and they want to see internships with Virginia Commonwealth University and how they can connect with some of those engineering students or business students, that sort of thing. So it really depends on the company. Sometimes I go alone or with one other partner, kind of get an idea of what they have going on in the operation, what their needs are, and then I have that follow up meeting and bring in the right partner. For smaller businesses, the Small Business Development Center has been a great asset for us in this region as they're trying to figure out their business plan using QuickBooks, some of those technical skills, some of that training that's necessary to just run and start and run a business. They've been a good partner for us as well. And then our Workforce Development Board, particularly around finding job seekers, finding folks that can fill some of their positions. So it depends on the conversation, or even before the meeting, I try to ask, what are some of the things you'd like to discuss during our meeting? I'm interested how things are going, and that can better prepare me to know who to bring with me during that visit.
Yeah, when I was in economic development full time before I started the business, yeah, I always loved that piece of it. I was working in Maryland in my last full time economic development job, and we started Business Appreciation Week, and it. Was this idea of kind of formalizing the process and doing everything in one week, and now we've got lots of communities doing this, and it's kind of a standard part of your business retention strategy. But I always loved being in meetings with the partners and hearing their perspective or their new program or their lens to solving the problem is always really interesting.
Yeah, I love getting them in the room because I can talk about what they offer. I have a bird's eye view of all the things that are going on throughout the region and in the county, but it's so nice to have them come in and talk from the passion that they have about their work, right? And even learning about the new programs that they have going on. So our director of CTE here in Henrico is amazing, and you can tell he loves the work. So I am amazed when I sit in meetings with him, his you can see his brain working, and he's like, "Oh, okay, so you guys create doors? Well, we've got carpentry students that are building houses. So what if we got some of your doors or had them come into your facility to see where the doors actually come from that they're putting on these houses, right?"
Hmm.
I mean, some of those things, it's just obvious, but I don't think about it at the time, and he's just like on the mark with it. So it's nice to have them there in person. And I learn about new programs that they have, new innovative offerings that maybe I'm not aware of. So I learn a lot in those BRE meetings.
Well, and it's interesting 'cause, some of the questions we get are from, those that are relatively new to economic development. And so what feels like a no-brainer and kind of obvious to us after, yeah, I've been in this space for almost 30 years. So it is different, but we all have a different lens and insights in the way that we, the things that we're able to retain and put the whole puzzle together, which is fun. I'd love to talk a little bit about regionalism as it relates to the greater Richmond region and how you play with some of your neighboring communities. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So we are part of the Greater Richmond Partnership. That is our regional group. And so they help to coordinate our efforts, particularly around lead generation, getting new businesses, help coordinate visits from executives who are looking at sites across our region. And then also they do a great job of bringing consultants in just to do those familiarization tours or FAM tours and get to know the region. So we work really well. I think as a region, we're very collaborative. We recognize that a win for one of our localities is a win for the region. Um, and we all know each other. We've all worked, here at the state and work for VEDP and at another locality here. We go to conferences together. We travel together. We go to the Virginia Economic Developers Association conference together, and so we have good relationships. And then we also have monthly meetings where it could be virtually or in person. We've started to throw in some elements of fun in those. So one of our most recent meetings, we actually went to performance pickleball here in Henrico and went and played pickleball. All of the managers or managing directors across the different localities in our region, just to have fun together. Yeah, we're competing for projects. Don't get me wrong. I want to win for Henrico, but I'm also happy when the other localities win as well, and we have a good relationship where we can celebrate those wins together. So um, it's really collaborative, and it's nice because I think we are in a good spot. Richmond is a good spot to be. We're central. We have the airport. We have the river. We have some really good assets. So we all work together to sell those together.
Awesome. How was pickleball?
Pickleball was fun. We actually ended up bringing some people from Virginia Economic Development Partnership from the state a second time around to play and did a tour throughout the region because they want to stay fresh on what we've got going on as well. Pickleball is a lot of fun. I'd recommend it to anyone, especially if you have knee problems. It's kind of Tennis can be rough on your knees because it's faster, but pickleball is a little bit slower depending on who you're playing against.
Yeah. I played with my dad and his friends, and they were not taking it easy on us, let me tell
Oh,
you.
okay.
They were pretty intense. So, but I was a tennis player and yeah, had some challenges. And so I need to get, you know, I need to get out on the pickleball court to give it a shot. I think it would be a little easier on my bod.
I'd say it is.
Oh, that's awesome. You mentioned, fam tours, this familiarization, Asian tours of the area and things like that. And I want to kind of loop it back to the comment that you made at the beginning about data. And I'm curious how you're finding, with those tours, how heavy do you lean in with data, and how does that balance the storytelling? Because, in all of these things in economic development, we are trying to tell a story. So I'm curious how
Yeah,
it goes.
yeah. Um, so with the fam tours, those are more leaning towards the experience, right? So we try to get them here, see the quality of life assets that we have. Go down to the river. We actually did a fam tour and took some folks whitewater rafting on the James, and that was something different, something new, but wanting to keep it exciting, right? And then the data comes in, I think, a little bit after the fact. So after we have these conversations, we're getting to know these consultants just like they're getting to know us. We figure out what types of projects they're working, what industries they're really focused on, and the data is a good opportunity for that follow up. So after they're here, they've been here 3 days, we've had dinner with them, we've taken them on tours of different manufacturers or different corporate offices, new developments throughout the region. We get to learn kind of where their ear is tuned towards. Okay, I can follow up now and talk about the workforce. Here's some data on our workforce in advanced manufacturing, or here's some data on the graduates that we have out of all of our business schools that are going to be that pipeline into some of those corporate settings. So it really, for me, I use the data as an opportunity to follow up, to share more, to give them something tangible to look at and to dive more deeply into our region and into Henrico. But usually I come with that after the fact.
Awesome. I love it. I'm curious, you had mentioned when we spoke last week that you were doing some teaching at VCU on economic development. I'd love to hear some of the thoughts of students and, when you're in that capacity of explaining economic development to a fresh set of eyes and ears. I'm curious if how that's shaped your lens.
It's interesting because so I teach, the class is called economic geography.
Oh, cool.
Uh, but the description really ties to how businesses make location decisions. We do a little bit of history and talk about how urban areas or how economies were established across the US and how they continue to, new economies are formed. But we're really diving into location decision factors, I even have them do an RFI at the end of the class. That's their last project. Kind of, this is what would happen if a company came to you wanting to learn more about your community. Tell me how you would sell it. But what's interesting is, as you mentioned, not many people know about economic development. They don't know about the process. So they live here in Richmond. They're VCU students, so they're seeing different developments going on at the Diamond. Some of them are from Henrico, so they see our new Henrico Sports and Event Center, but they don't know how these things came about, or that there are people or a group of individuals or an office, geared towards making these things happen. So it's fun to incorporate some of those headlines, some of the stories that they see into the class and get their reactions. I think at that age, when you're 18 to 23, let's say, they're skeptical and I'd say critical often of things going around. Nothing's ever good enough. This could be better. The transportation could be better. This could be better, yada, yada, yada. But then when I show them the real people behind it and some of the efforts that are going into making Richmond and this region what it is, I think they're really surprised. They're like, oh, there is some intentionality around that. And then I also bring in speakers. So I bring in my friends, my colleagues across the state. I try to bring someone from community development, someone that works in transportation, have them come in and talk about what their role is in economic development as well.
That sounds awesome. I absolutely love it.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the closest I get to that, probably I facilitate the Chesapeake Basic Economic Development course, and I love it, getting to connecting with those that are new to economic development generally. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're like, they've been in it for 5 or 6 years or 10 years, and they're like, oh, it's time to get certified. I think I need to go through this process. So you get them on all ends, but that's interesting. I'm curious of your RFI project, if they get to pick, if they're all using the Richmond area, or if they get to pick a different community across the country, like you assign it.
So I give them a list of the top 50 MSAs in the US and they get to pick.
Cool.
And so then some obvious things come out, right? So if you get San Francisco, you're going to be, it might be easier for you because the RFIs are on a tech company.
Okay.
So if you're, I'm not going to call out any communities, but depending on the community, it could be harder to sell to a tech company versus others. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And so they have to, they do a formal presentation, they do a write up, and I make them put slides together, just like in economic development. If I were going to pitch my community to some consultants or to a company, I have to make the sell regardless of where I am. And so it's an interesting exercise for them, but they get to see kind of the real world experience. And then some of the students aren't from here. I have students from Pennsylvania and Colorado and all over the US. And so they bring their perspective because some of their communities are very different from the Richmond region.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, as we wrap up, I'm curious if there were any, if you had any, I've got a final question myself, but I was curious if you had any questions or thoughts or anything that you wanted to share today.
Well, I think I do have an interesting journey into this economic development world, but I am just so enamored with the profession. I'm always trying to get more people to learn what we do. I encourage folks, you don't have to have government experience. You don't have to be an urban planner. You don't have to have that formalized education. But if you care about where you live, or if you care about selling even, I would encourage folks to consider economic development. Anyone that's listening, consider it as a career field. I think, it's really important. We do really important work. If you are a business owner, please connect with your economic development office. I tell folks that all the time. I can't tell you how many people I encounter that are owning and running successful businesses, but have never spoken to their economic development office, or even, their board members. It's important to stay tapped into what's going on, where's the growth happening in your county, or just having that relationship. You never know what could come out of it. So I encourage folks to do that.
I echo all of that. I think that's perfect. Yes, yes, yes. So my last question is, can you describe your EDO breakthrough, that aha moment? What was your breakthrough for economic development?
My breakthrough for economic development, actually, it happened on the Eastern Shore. I was working for the USDA Rural Development, and we were doing these community strategic planning events. We were helping communities with that. And we went to the Eastern Shore to lead a meeting. And this was my first time that I really got to see it in action, because I started there as a data analyst as well. So I wasn't really out and about as much, but I got to see folks have input on their communities and where they saw things going. And, this is a rural focus. So that was even a kind of paradigm shift for me, because I'm originally from an urban area in Michigan. And so just seeing folks speak with passion about where they live, and then seeing the leadership engage in the conversation too, it was like, oh, this is important stuff. This is it. I like this. I enjoy this. This is where I want to be. So that was kind of the breakthrough for me. Like, you're on the right path. You're in the right spot.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I love that story. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool. Well, with that, I'm going to say thank you for joining me today. I hope I'm sure our listeners enjoyed this conversation as much as I certainly did. And we will have all of your contact information in the show notes if people would like to connect. So thank you very much, Ebonie.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be. Loved it.
The EDO Breakthrough podcast is brought to you by PPR Strategies. PPR Strategies, standing for People and Places Reimagined, is a strategic consulting firm working specifically with EDOs and other place-based organizations. We share the unique stories of communities through communication, strategic planning, marketing, media relations, and more. Visit us at pprstrategies.com and find our contact information in the show notes. I'd like to give a big thank you to you for listening. Remember, together we are unstoppable.